Welcome to the Smart Connector podcast. As ever, I have a very exciting guest for you tonight. Welcome, Naomi Timperley.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So, Naomi is a consultant, she's a speaker, and she's a growth strategy and innovation expert. She's co-founder of Tech North Advocates. She's been a mentor for 8 years and has supported several hundred businesses to grow. She's an honorary fellow at the University of Salford, that's in Manchester for our international clients, which is one of the main cities here in the UK. And she's been declared the fourth most influential women in tech by Computer Weekly. And she works with startups and scale-ups to help them with their growth. So tonight, we're going to deep dive on some of those strategies that help them succeed. So, Naomi, it's such a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. So, Naomi, tell us a little bit about your background before we actually get into it. I know we were chatting beforehand, but how did you come to be this kind of consultant in this powerhouse on, startups, scale-ups, growth, innovation, all of that kind of thing?
So a lot of it's happened by accident. I will say I would say I'm an accidental entrepreneur. But if I sort of wind back, my
Yeah.
first career was in the travel sector. So I worked as a travel agent, then I worked for a tour operator. I was a holiday rep in Bulgaria, of all places. I did 2 summer seasons on the beach and 2 winter seasons in the mountains. So was a great skier and a rubbish snowboarder. And then my mum moved up north whilst I was working overseas, and I came back home. I'd met my partner who was from Manchester, and I got into tech recruitment in the late 90s. Did that for about 3 years, and then came away from that, helped set up a travel recruiting business. So an outfit outside of London wanted to set up in Manchester. So I supported that for about a year, and then took 4 years out to have my 2 daughters. After about 4 years, I was in a very fortunate position. I know that not a lot of people financially can do that. And my mum always said to me, if you can afford to, take some time out. And I did. I came across an American events company whilst I was researching party ideas for my daughter. And it was events for parents and kids at the weekends. And it was called Baby Loves Disco. And it was in 27 cities across America and had grown because they created this amazing community. And they told great stories, and it was all about classic disco and getting parents and children active, but in the environment of a child-proof nightclub. And I thought it sounded amazing, so I contacted them in January of 2007 and asked them if they thought about bringing it to the UK. A Sky TV news presenter at the time had tried to do it, but she didn't go with their brand. And I was quite happy to go with their brand. They had a really strong brand presence in America. So in the September of 2007, I launched in Manchester and London. Before we even launched, we had a 2-page spread in the Saturday Times knowledge supplement. And then the next year, it just sort of grew and grew. And in 2008, I was contacted by the BBC several times to come on to Dragon's Den. And I went on Dragon's Den with my American business partner. And we were offered investment by Deborah Meaden, but we turned it down. Usual story. They wanted, a big piece of the pie. It sort of, we'd had lots and lots of press before that, but it sort of, I suppose I then started getting involved with youth entrepreneurship and women's entrepreneurship. And after about 4 years of having the events business, I sold my shares to our Scottish host mum, who up until 2022 was still running the events. And I set up a youth enterprise and employability company with 2 guys that I met on Twitter. And that was to bridge the gap between education, employment and enterprise. And then did that for about 3 years. They went into a direction that I didn't want to go to with the startup loans. And I've sort of been consulting ever since. So one of the things that we did a lot of with the Youth Enterprise and Employability Company, which was called Enterprise Lab, was very much around entrepreneurial thinking and mindsets. So that's how I sort of came to work with startups. I've designed, developed, and delivered several entrepreneurship programs, but then also fell into working with scale ups. And it just happened that a lot of the businesses on the programs that I'd been part of were digital, tech, or creative businesses. But to be fair, I've worked with tons and tons of all different types of businesses.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, you have an incredible story and a really fantastic track record. And I can tell just from that, Naomi, that this issue about mindset and something that we were talking about before we came on air, which was about connection and relationships and so on. I can see that you're a natural at all of that because it is not easy really to, to come out of the workplace, to spend some time bringing up your children. I did this as well, and then go back in and have that confidence and that drive to really make it happen. But you did, so that does take a certain kind of mindset, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And to be fair, I do something that scares me every single day of the week.
Mhm.
And again, if I'm talking like in a workplace, I'm going snowboarding in a couple of weeks, so that's quite scary as well. But it's like I think I'm always constantly challenging myself, and I think to be fair, I came into my own after having children.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it for me anyway as well, it just everything fell into place
Mm,
because all of a sudden as a parent you realize your own mortality
mm,
and it's very humbling and very grounding in a way, isn't it? And
yeah,
you're just like, well, I don't have to spend a lot of time navel gazing and wondering about my purpose anymore because
yeah,
I know what that is. And
yeah.
so I may as well, okay, that's dealt with. So I'll just go off and do what I can in order to, be a good role model, make some money, have some fun, and do all of that stuff that good stuff that we deserve, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I think it's had a really big. So my husband is an entrepreneur as well. He's had a couple of different businesses, and I think it's had a really big positive impact on the children. So, my youngest daughter, who's turning 18 next week, when she was 11, we had the opportunity to go to America, and we did a TEDx talk in America.
Mm,
She wouldn't have had that again, and that was through a connection that I had because I'm massively interested in entrepreneurship education.
yeah.
And I was connected with somebody who was a professor of entrepreneurship at Illinois State University, which is about 2 hours south of Chicago in a town called Normal. And he'd done
Normal.
the yeah, a place called Normal, and he'd sort of seen, we were connected on LinkedIn and Facebook, and he'd seen all the things that I sort of done on a regular basis, and he said to me, I'd really love you to come and speak at our second TEDx Normal. And I was like, I'd love to, but actually at the time my daughter was obsessed with watching TED talks and TEDx talks,
Oh,
and she'd done this really cute, quite empowering monologue and recorded it. And I sent it to him and I said, I'd love to do it. I said, but actually, I'd love to get me and my daughter to do a talk. And literally, he came back to me 10 minutes later. He went, yeah, 100%, let's do a mother and daughter talk. And we did a
oh,
talk on the power of children's ideas and how, as adults, if we thought more like kids, we come up with better ideas.
oh, that's so cute. I bet that was amazing.
It was
That's
incredible.
yeah,
Yeah.
and what an experience for her as well.
Absolutely. And do you know what?
Yeah.
When she asked me to help her with the CV, I had so much joy putting it on her CV.
Oh, that's so sweet. Oh, that's so cute. Okay, well, fantastic. So, yeah, before we move on, I wanted to ask you about Dragon's Den because
Mhm.
obviously there's a lot of startups out there in particular who probably dream of being on Dragon's Den. I mean, it
Mm.
must have been a little bit terrifying in a way as well because all of those dragons, they're all very fierce, aren't they? So I just wanted to ask about your experience there.
Um, yes, you're right. It was terrifying. It was in 2008 that we filmed it and it went out. And it was when they were still filming it at Pinewood Studios. So it was very exciting to go down to Pinewood Studios. I suppose the negative thing about it was that me and my American business partner had the evening before to practice our pitch. We'd been doing it on Skype. So, I think that was a bit of a problem. But, we went down to Pinewood Studios. They were filming an Anthony Hopkins film called Wolfman. So there was loads of people walking around with wolf outfits. And we were in the den for an hour and 45 minutes. And obviously that's heavily edited to like three to 4 minutes when they show it. And, I remember being, there was a load of people that had been supposed to have pitched the week before, but because one of the dragons had been poorly, they were all called back, and we just assumed we'd be the last people to pitch. So they had the first company that pitched, and then they sort of disappeared, and then we got called. And I just remember, I thought, how am I going to get through this? I was really nervous, and I kept on rocking. And I was in heels. I love wearing heels, but when you're standing for an hour and 45 minutes, it gets a bit sore. And I think I found something in myself, and I thought, you know what, if I could do that, I can do anything. And the fact that, one of them wanted to invest in us, to be fair, I was like, not really, I was arrogant to think that they would all want to invest, but just to have one person believe. And actually Deborah is just gorgeous. And actually they did a follow-up show the year before, just to sort of see where we're up to. And one of the things, again, that they don't show you because it's edited is I asked, if we had taken the investment, what would they do? And everything that she said, we were doing anyway. That's what we'd planned to do anyway. So it wasn't anything different. So I'm really glad that I rejected the offer. But what I will say to anyone who's thinking about doing it, and I spoke to an entrepreneur a couple of weeks ago who was really unhappy about the way that he'd been edited. And I just said, what did you expect? It's a TV show. It's like The Apprentice, any sort of reality TV show, they will depict you in the way that they want to.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, I come from a broadcast media background. I worked in media and entertainment for around 20 years.
Yeah.
And, everybody knows that really the power is in the editing. That's
absolutely
where the story is told, for sure. And anybody that doesn't really understand that, well, you're playing with fire, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not in control. It's a fair exchange, right? You go in there and you give them a bit of entertainment, and they will get whatever they want out of it as well. So oh, fantastic. Well, it's great to hear about that. So interesting. Okay, well, moving on. So we were talking beforehand about startups and about value propositions, business models, product market fit, and all of those wonderful things that get businesses off the ground in the right way. And I know that you're really passionate about that, Naomi. So we decided that we were going to look at some of that stuff tonight. And what do you see? Because you have mentored hundreds of businesses and business owners.
Yeah.
So you must have seen a lot of the same things over that time. And so I'd love to hear all about the common mistakes that you see and the advice that you give startups in terms of, these issues and, whether what actually happens. Do they take your advice, or what happens if they don't, and all of that? So over to you anyway on that topic.
So what's really interesting is even with the scale up businesses that I've worked with, they make common mistakes that actually, if they got those bits right in the first place, they'd be in a completely different position. So, if I'm working with startups, it's either people that have, started trading, or it's that very early stage. And I think one thing that I see a lot of, so people can think they've got a great idea for something, right? They can think, okay, I'm going to invent this new product or create this new service, and people are going to want to buy it. Unless you've done a lot of research into actually testing your assumptions as to whether this is a good idea, and speaking to people who you believe would be your customers. And again, even people get that wrong. and having those conversations. And that's not just sending out a little survey, a Google survey. This is about having conversations with people, not just your friends and your family, and finding out actually what problems your customer group has. And again, that customer group is not just one person. Again, another thing that really winds me up is when I speak to somebody and they'll say, yeah, my customer base is someone between the ages of 25 and 35, and the male, and they've got, they don't even know what problems they have. And I think it's that doing that sort of deep research at the beginning, giving you the foundations at that idea stage. And thinking about, what jobs that the customer wants done, what problems they have, how are you going to excite the customers to want to buy your thing because you're solving, you're solving this problem that they have, or something like that. And again, just building those foundations first, and then looking at, once you've got the idea and you sort of kind of tested it, because I'm a big fan of Google Ventures methodology. So most people ideate something, they'll then build it, then they'll launch it, and then they'll learn from it. The Google Ventures methodology is you ideate, learn, ideate, learn, ideate, learn, and then you build it, and then you launch it. And I think it's just making sure that you've got really clear value propositions, so you can say in one sentence what it is that you do, and who your customers are, and then also what's the business model around that, and actually, how are you going to acquire those customers once you've got that business up and running.
Oh, definitely. I was interested to hear what you were saying about Google Ventures and ideate, learn, and so on. Because when you're in an organization, it's easy to ideate, learn, isn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously, the struggle that a lot of entrepreneurs have is that they need money, and they need to make money fast, really, don't they, in order to stay afloat. So the ideate, learn, it sounds wonderful, but it also sounds like a bit of a luxury for people that, they have to pay the bills, don't they? So
they do, but I think it depends on what you're doing. So if it's a product, you have to do that.
Yeah.
You have to do that. There's no cutting around corners. Unless you do that, you're going to make mistakes. If it's a service, if it's a service-based business, you can be up and running. You still sort of have to test the market and see whether you've got a service that people want to buy.
Yeah.
It's a lot quicker to get to market with a service-based business rather than a sort of product.
Yeah, I mean, that's very, very, very valuable insights, because obviously products and services, they are different, aren't they?
Yeah.
And so, like, typically the kind of products that you will be advising businesses on day to day might be, well, they'd be in the tech space, right? Mostly, is that right? Or
Predominantly, yeah. But
yeah,
again, it's even like setting up really basic, as part of that learn process, that's like setting up basic minimum viable products, so you can
yeah,
test things. And again, it's basic, it's basically not going full hill and building this thing that you think is going to be the amazing thing, and
yes.
then launching it.
Yeah, no, I totally get that, because I think a lot of people, obviously I'm a marketer, that's my
Yeah.
background, so I understand all of this. And I think, I work with a lot of experts who are not expert marketers,
Yeah.
that's my niche. They haven't got a clue about marketing, but they've got a very deep expertise in another area, maybe finance or something like that. And, I don't think they really often understand that you can't just do this thing of build it and they will come, right? You
Yeah.
just can't do it, can you? So
No.
let's actually explore why that doesn't work.
It's interesting actually. I've been I was a lead mentor for Help to Grow for one of the universities. It's a program that was funded by Bayes and the Small Business Charter, and a lot of the businesses that came across, they were businesses doing really, really well, but actually often that they did very little marketing. They had naturally just acquired customers and got referrals, which is fantastic. But actually, if you want to sort of scale and go to the next level, you've got to have a plan and action. And
Yeah.
again, it's just like looking back at some of those really basic things that you may not have done at the beginning, and how you can sort of improve the experience for the customers and the processes and things like that. So you can, but I think it's a really, really common mistake, again, that people, I do a lot of programs with universities.
Yeah.
And there's one particular university in Manchester, so we do 2 boot camps a year, and we'll have about 3 cohorts over a couple of weeks. So we'll do 2 physical ones, and then we'll do a virtual boot camp, and they're over 2 days. So we get like sometimes 50, 60 people that have got business ideas on the programs. And again, they've got, we've got this great idea, and we think it's this, and it's going to do that. And I'm like, okay, so just digging in a little bit deeper, explain it to me in one sentence what it is. Because again, if you're looking at creating something, and especially in the tech sector, which sometimes can require getting funding, you've got to have tested it in the market first. And even if it's tested that very basic MVP, and you've had those conversations, and so many people don't do that. They don't do any due diligence. They base everything on their own assumptions instead of having the conversations. So I think there's so many things that people miss. But again, it's like making sure that you're methodical about it. And there's so much stuff online that there's no excuses anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's ego, really, isn't it? I think we tend to, if we give in to our egos, and we tend to tell ourselves, well, we know best. I think that's the most dangerous position for any
Yeah.
entrepreneur,
Yeah.
is just to think that we are, we're a bit like God, really,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. Okay, so Naomi, this whole business about minimum viable product and so on. I mean, let's kind of get into that. What kind of minimum viable product would you typically advise a startup to go out there with?
Do you know what? It depends on what it is, but I'll give you a very basic idea. So let's just say, and this could be for a product as well. So a minimum viable product could be a launch page. It
Mhm.
doesn't need to be it doesn't need to be a physical thing. It could
Yeah.
be a concept. And I know people that have had, again, done the research. They've got a minimum viable product, which is actually a deck and a launch page. They've done the homework on who the customer is. And actually, I know one particular company who went to a trade show with a concept, and it looks so real that actually they got customers, even for something that's not been taken to market or tested or anything like that, or they haven't even got a product, and they got people to believe in it. So a minimum viable product can be quite simply sometimes just a launch page. But it's about, getting people to buy into it. So for example, let's just say you were looking at creating a membership organization or something like that. And for again, to sort of test the market, you would build something, a very simple launch page, which you can do on things like Wix or GoDaddy or Squarespace. Have a very clear value proposition, and then a call to action. And then based on, again, you sort of sharing that and other people sharing it and getting that conversation going, find out whether people are interested in what you're trying to sell the idea of. It doesn't, even like basic wireframes, it doesn't need to be, you've got low fidelity minimum viable products, which can be literally something written down on a piece of paper, or you've got ones that are high fidelity, which might be, say, a version 1 of something, a very basic thing, which you can perhaps move one thing from the other to another or something like that. So, I think it depends on what stage that you're at, but I wouldn't recommend anyone doing an MVP unless they've done their homework first.
Yeah, very, very good point. I mean, obviously, I'm a big fan of getting into dialogue with your
Yeah.
marketplace, and With one of my programs, for example, I mean, I've been working with clients for around 18 months now. So that really is it's a marketing program for experts.
Mhm.
And through that program, I realized that one of the things, the biggest things that they struggled with was the messaging and the offer
Yeah,
creation. So
yeah,
now I've put together a kind of new training on that. But in the beginning, I always say to my clients as well, is try and sell, just
yeah,
go out there and actually make an offer that is gonna because people will say all the time, "I think that sounds like a great idea," but until you actually say to them, "Okay, well, it's gonna cost you X,"
absolutely.
will you know
Yeah,
whether
yeah,
they're just
yeah,
being polite or
yeah,
whether it is actually
yeah,
valuable?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's interesting actually because Queen's University in Belfast have got a brilliant program where they work with a number of different universities in the north, as well as when I say the north, I'm talking like Sheffield, the University of Manchester, and a couple of other universities are
Yeah.
involved in it. And it's a program that's aimed specifically at academics who have research that they could commercialise.
Okay.
And I've worked with a couple of academics where, again, they've got something. So there's one particular guy who had a music AI based, he'd done a load of work on it, obviously an academic study, but actually had a prototype. And as part of this program, one of the things they had to do was test the market. So actually
Mm.
having conversations. And if you're, I'm not saying this is all academics are like this because actually they're not, but you'll get some people who are quite shy about having a conversation with somebody, even if
Mm.
it's about something that they're super passionate about. And what was really nice is just sort of seeing this person sort of grow in confidence. But again, even that first conversation, that second and the third and the fourth and the 10th and the 20th, their confidence grew because they were articulating easier what it was that they were doing.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, that's, actually being able to communicate what you do is so
Mm.
important, isn't it, Naomi? Because, you were talking earlier about, actually pitching your product to, or your service or whatever to investors, and how really they are not going to take you seriously unless you can say in a single sentence what it's all about, because people, they're always looking for shortcuts, really, aren't they? They want to be able to put you and your valuable service in a nice, neat little box and say, "That's what it is." What do you think
Well,
about
also, yeah, well, I agree with you. I think it's you capture somebody's attention within the first couple of seconds.
that?
I think the
Mm,
worst pitch that I ever watched, and I've listened and watched and judged loads and loads of pitches. The
yeah.
worst one was from an ex-European marketing director of a car company, right?
Oh, really?
Who pitched an idea, and this is
Yeah.
like we're talking about a marketing director. So you'd think he would be brilliant at
Yeah.
articulating. He pitched for 10 minutes. Me, the people in front of me, the people behind me, the people beside me had absolutely no idea what it was that he was doing after 10 minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
And he was a marketing director?
He'd basically been he was an ex-marketing director, European marketing director
Wow.
of a global car company. And he was pitching his business idea. So he'd left this car company, pitching a business idea, and he'd worked on it for a while, and he was pitching in front of investors, in front of loads of different types of people. And at the end of the 10 minutes, I was like, I've got no idea what he does. And this is the thing, if you're pitching, whether it's to a potential customer, to an investor, whoever, you capture people's attention in those first couple of seconds. And you have to, again, having that ability to be able to sell yourself, it is a real skill.
Well, it definitely is. Actually, one of my favorite books, and I don't know whether you've read this, Naomi, is Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff. Have you
I've,
ever read that book?
I haven't read it, but I have come across it.
Yeah, so it's really good. It's all about, basically how to take the power
Yeah.
in a pitching situation, how not to be the one down, in the one down position. And I love that, because obviously it's all about psychology, really, isn't it? And
Yeah,
how, if you basically show up as a high status buyer effectively rather than
yeah,
a low status seller, then you manage to keep that curiosity and that intrigue and that interest.
yeah.
So it's all about how to do that. It's very kind of Machiavellian in a way. It's a little bit like The
Yeah,
Art of War, the Sun Tzu book.
yeah.
Very interesting.
And it's the same thing with like pitch decks. I've seen loads of pitch decks. And to be fair, an investor doesn't want to look at any more than about 10 pages. You can maybe get away with 15. I've seen some that are like 60 pages long.
Wow,
If you
really?
can't get across in 10 pages what it is that you do and whom you serve and how you serve them, there's a problem.
Definitely, definitely. Well, so, I mean, do you actually help businesses put together their pitch decks? You've raised investment, haven't you, for some
I,
businesses? So
I've supported some businesses to raise investment. Yes, I have helped lots and lots of businesses with pitch decks and how to pitch.
mhm,
I've sort of wear a number of different hats. So, like I said, I work with startups, but then I have a consultancy called We Are GSI, which I run with an entrepreneur called Vikas Shah.
yeah,
And that's GSI stands for Growth Strategy and Innovation.
yeah,
It does what it says on the can.
mm,
And essentially, we work with businesses in lots of different ways. And it might be that they want to go into new markets. It might be that they want to create new products and services as part of their sort of growth plan. And we also do sort of like one-to-one mentoring again, because a lot of
mm,
founders have people around them, but they don't actually have that person where they can actually say, do you know what, I'm not having a great day, I've got to do this. They sometimes don't have someone that's going to hold them personally accountable. And I think what's interesting is just sort of seeing in my eyes the different problems that I see businesses have.
mhm,
Because I think one of the things that there's obviously lots of growth programs. Some businesses are quite happy just surviving and thriving. Not everybody wants to have a multi-million, gazillion pound business where they're going to sell it and be a unicorn. That's not that's not for everybody, and that's
mm,
completely okay.
yeah. Yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, uh, everybody is free to choose the kind of business
Mm.
and the kind of life that they want, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we are not the ones to actually make those decisions for them,
No,
are we?
no, no.
But having said that, sometimes if people say, "Well, I don't really want to grow, I just wanna tick over,"
Hmm.
sometimes actually, I always think anyway that going for growth is not a bad thing,
Yeah,
because if you just aim to tick over, then your business runs the risk of doing a nosedive, whereas if
yeah,
you're
yeah,
always
absolutely.
striving for growth, then
Yeah,
you're more likely to okay, you might plateau,
yeah.
but, you're not gonna nosedive, right?
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And it's also as well about not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Aha.
I come across lots of businesses that have, maybe only one or two clients. And if those one or two clients pull the carpet from under them, they cease to exist.
Yes,
Same
absolutely.
as, I've worked with lots of social enterprises
Yeah,
and organizations that have relied on funding.
yeah,
I always say, it doesn't matter what type of business you are, whether you're a charity, a social enterprise, or a regular limited company, unless you have money coming in that you can, not only rely on, but funding can get cut. So I would always say for social enterprise, it should be at least 60% commercial and 40% funding, because just in case that funding tap turns off.
well, I don't really know a lot about social enterprise businesses, but that sounds like very sensible advice,
Yeah,
Naomi. I totally get it. It's all about kind of, managing risk really, isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, let's talk now about women in tech
Hmm.
because, yeah, I know that that's also a topic that you're really passionate about. Women are generally underrepresented, aren't they, in tech?
Yeah, yeah. We are, and I think it's if you probably look back to say the 50s and 60s, there's probably more women in tech then than there are now.
Oh,
I think there's a lot of reasons around that. I think I think people have this misconception that anything to do with tech is around coding. No, it's not. And actually, a lot of businesses have tech within the core of them. So even if you look at like let's just say your Sainsbury's, for example. Sainsbury's have a tech division. Most companies do now. So I think it's just looking at all the different roles within tech. If you're looking at like sort of computer science, when you get I remember there was a university that I did a talk at, and it was for computer science students, second year ones, and I was really shocked that there was like two women doing the course. And I asked the lecturer, and I said, how come there's only two women? And he said, well, actually we had a lot more, and they decided that they didn't want to continue with the course. And it's like, okay, why did they not want to continue with the course? And I think it's about, there's a couple of things. I think there's about is role models. I think also it's to do with the fact that actually, computer science in some schools is not being taught anymore. So you've got a problem with
not
that.
even being taught. Wow.
Yeah, they might do some. You might do it. I'm talking as a GCSE subject. In some schools, it's actually been dropped. But again, it's that misconception about the fact that not all roles in tech are around coding. And I think when I do a lot of stuff with schools as well. So if I'm going into a school, I might talk. I've done this in assemblies. I have a screen with lots of different job roles on it, and one of them will be programmer. All the other ones are tech related jobs. And I'll ask the young people in the audience if they recognize any of the jobs, and they don't, apart from the programmer one.
Wow.
So I think there's a careers thing, and I think it's also, just looking at transferable skills. So I was doing a workshop at the University of Salford Business School on Tuesday. And that was all about transferable skills. So a lot of the people that I was doing this workshop with were master students that had careers, but then were doing their masters to enhance their skills. And they all were really interested in the tech sector, but it was looking at the transferable skills that they'd had from their previous roles, but also from their studies and how they could fit into the tech sector. So I think there's definitely lots of room for improvement. Will we get to 50-50 split in the next 5-10 years? I don't think we will.
Yeah, definitely. And while you were talking, I was just thinking about schools, because I have 3 girls who are all in their 20s, actually. The youngest one is 20. So they've obviously been through school. They went to the grammar schools here in Buckinghamshire. So they're very high achieving schools with very good results and so on.
Yeah.
But I think one of the challenges with tech in schools is that I know, obviously, as a marketer, that when you get the intersection of tech and marketing, which is obviously, very, very important. I mean, I do a lot of stuff in online and, build a lot of funnels and, help support my clients, do the same and things like that. And the problem is that it is such a fast moving landscape that the traditional curriculum in the schools, which, as we know, has not
fit for
changed that
purpose.
much,
No.
for decades,
No.
they can't keep up. And yeah, same for universities, I think, because my children, they all studied business in one shape or form. And when they told me what they were learning, it's like, well, they're not actually teaching some of the most important stuff here, that it's
I think
hard, isn't it?
it is hard. I think it depends on what type of university that you go to. So I think, yes, I agree with all of the comments that you've just made. I think universities are slightly better at it because they have to, I think about all the incredible stuff that Salford do. They have like robotics, they've got Energy House, they've got all these
Wow.
really amazing things.
Mm.
I know some other universities that don't have as many things like that, and the curriculum has to be as current as possible. Schools, on the other hand,
Yeah.
GCSE computer science is still talking about floppy disks.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and it's very dry, and I'm going to put my shoes back into Naomi when she was at school. Okay, so I'm
Mm.
51 now. So I was at school in the high school in the mid 80s. I went to a comprehensive. I did typing and word processing. I had no interest in computers at all because it was all boys that did it, and in my eyes it was the boys that like played. To be fair, there was no games then. It was literally, we had a ZX Spectrum in my house, and it was that game which was basically 2 lines and a dot, which is a tennis thing.
Yeah, it's the nerds, the nerds.
Yeah, it seemed like it was the nerds, and to me, I wasn't encouraged to go and do that, and actually I wasn't very good at maths. So it was generally the kids that were really good at maths that would also do the computer science subjects as well. So, I think again, it's just working out where you fit into that. It's like any type of industry. There's a part to play for everybody, and you'll have some people, like, I don't think I would have the patience to learn how to code. I probably could do the very basics, but it wouldn't fill me with joy.
No, and we're all different. We all have a different psychological makeup, and
Yeah.
it's just fact, isn't it? There are
Mhm.
things that we love doing, and things that we, just they just don't. They just don't really fill, as you said, fill us with joy, right? So
Yeah.
it is part of our responsibility, I think, as human beings, to find the stuff that makes our heart sing.
Yeah.
But I think the message that you are conveying tonight really is that in tech there is a place for everyone,
Mhm. There,
right? There's a
there is,
place.
there is,
Yeah.
there is. But I think, one thing that is a massive hot topic at the moment, and this is nationally and internationally, is about the digital skills pipeline. And
Uh-huh.
employers have a responsibility to go into schools and colleges and universities and talk to students, because I'll
Yeah.
say something else, and this is a controversial comment, so I'm not trying to offend any careers advisors out there, but careers advisors haven't kept up with all the different types of jobs, and I think, again, it's looking at like the different skills that young people have. One of the organizations that I've done some work with is a company called a social enterprise called Digital Advantage, that have sort of changed into a charity now. But what they do is, and I've done some delivery with them, we would go into a school or a college for a week, and we'd work with 30 students, and we would set up a digital agency. And what we would do is, on the Monday, I help the young people to identify a problem that they wanted to solve with digital. Okay. By the end of the week, they have a very basic MVP. They've got a website, they've got a content plan, they've got a business model, they've got a pitch deck, you name it. And I'm telling you, those kids were skipping and jumping into school on the Tuesday, the Wednesday, Thursday, and the
Oh,
Friday, because
really?
they're learning in a different way. Obviously, it's not like the usual teacher, but they're basically being given a free rein to be creative. And what's interesting is you'll find some kids are really good at the communication side of things. You've got some people that are really good about the ideas, and it's just finding those different pieces of the jigsaw puzzle and skills wise. Because when I was at school, my careers advisor said to me, "You'll be lucky if you get a job in Marks and Spencer's."
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, mind
And
mind you, I mean, I suppose a job in Marks and Spencer's,
yeah,
for our
there's nothing wrong with
yeah,
working
I
in
know.
Marks and
For
Spencer's,
our
but
international audience, that's
yeah,
considered to be quite good, actually.
yeah.
Yeah, but
But
by traditional standards.
yeah, it is, and also as well, it's also that misconception that every young person should go to university. I didn't go to university until I was 44.
Oh, wow, yeah, okay. Yeah, so you were a
And
late learner.
I was a rubbish student. I can't write in an academic way, but I got a postgrad certificate, obviously had a graduation party. But I think it, again, and I work with universities now, and I absolutely love it. Honestly, I've been working with the University of Salford, for example, for about 12 years, with MMU for about 8 years, and it does fill me with joy, just sort of seeing young people. But again, it's just people have different career paths, and there's a great book called Squiggly Careers. I don't know whether you've ever come across it.
Oh, I haven't, yeah.
And a lot of young people think even now that you have a linear career path, and we don't. People are having multiple careers,
Yeah, yeah,
but
and,
it's those transferable skills across them.
yeah, exactly, and, I had that right from the very start because I actually started off my career as an art director and a designer, so I worked in film and TV and theatre, and I did that
Mhm.
for around 4 years, and then I moved into marketing and then, into kind of sales, and then obviously because I already knew that kind of environment, I ended up working in media and for
Mhm.
television companies, and I ended up running a television design agency, so
Mhm.
that's what I did, that we sold to a US communications group. But at that particular time, kind of jumping about, as people
Mhm.
might see it, was very unusual.
Yeah.
And I think, I remember there was a time when I look back and I thought, "You know what? This has all come together perfectly."
Yeah.
It was really funny because, at the time, none of it kind of made sense. And to be honest, I think this happens with a lot of people. You don't quite know why you end up doing certain things. It's just you
Yeah.
meet somebody and they kind of pick you and they say, "Oh, you'd be good to do this." And then, somehow it all falls out and it all makes sense and it's like, "Oh, that was why it happened." Isn't that funny? Yeah.
And Jane, do you know what? You can't expect a 16, 17, 18, or even 19-year-old to know what they want to do. There's only very few people that know what they want to do. I
Yeah,
didn't know what
definitely.
I've sort of fell into what I'm doing, and I absolutely love it. But it's taken me a long time to get to this point.
Yeah, exactly, but as you said, a lot of your experience that you've had led up to this, right?
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, what can I say, Naomi? It's been a really fascinating conversation with you tonight. So much value. So I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been absolutely delightful. Now, if people wanted to contact you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Okay, the best way to contact me is either on Twitter. It's quite simply at Naomi Timperley, and I think I'm the only Naomi Timperley on LinkedIn. So happy
Handy.
to answer any questions or have a conversation with anyone.
Amazing. Okay, well, thank you again, Naomi, and I'll look
Thank
forward
you.
to seeing more of your content on LinkedIn and, yeah, the podcast coming out as well. Okay.
Thank you.